Look at that. What quality? What quality? Give me just a second. We'll figure this out. Figure this out. Hello. No video. Can we do this? Okay, and this. Telling you what. Quality beyond. Just beyond. That's all I have to say. 1440 quality. Dutch, we're still in the dungeon for the time being. I have yet to buy a house. So the news happens in the dungeon until that happens. So and then even when that happens, I don't know if everybody knows how long it takes in the United States. It takes like 30 days after that to actually close on the house. So it's going to be at least 45 days. I got to find a house to put an offer on. So the dungeon is a good place to share news. Yeah. So it's okay. How's everyone doing today? Sorry for the little bit of a rocky start there. All right. Well, let's get into the news. We had some stuff. I've made a little bit of change how we do it because I used to do this as kind of I kind of did it as a shotgun approach, just covered a bunch of things. I've pared it down, and I'm going to talk on the things that you guys think are most interesting, or hopefully what you think is most interesting. If you prefer the shotgun approach, where we just cover absolutely everything that happened, well, then we can do that, and you just let me know. But I'm going to give this a try for a couple of weeks at least. Give me feedback in a couple of weeks on how you're liking it. And yeah, let's get into it. The very first thing that we're going to talk about, my dear fellow netizens of software engineering, is a message from the CEO, Andy Jassy. At least I think it's Jassy. I'm not entirely sure. But it's a note on how to strengthen your culture and teams. We should go over it. A note on how to strengthen your culture and teams from a CEO that will probably now never hire me. Let's go on. So, this September 16th was sent out to AWS, and AWS is taking a hard line approach. They expect 5 days from the office every single week moving forward. And this is to strengthen your culture. And I'm going to say something maybe controversial. This might be true. If AWS never attempted to build or maintain culture, if they wanted culture to happen by accident, then I think that this is true. I think this is probably very true. This is my same argument that I've had against the water cooler thing. Everybody is like, oh, you can't have those water cooler things where, you meet by the water cooler and have innovation. if you're expecting innovation or culture to be a happy accident, then join Bob Ross in his painting tutorials, and hopefully you have some happy accident. But the thing is, none of those things should be accidental. Your culture, your innovation, and those things shouldn't be accidental. And so I have a hard time with these types of statements because it states that you don't have a leadership that can manage to do culture or innovation without accidents. And that's not a great look, in my opinion, for the cultures. I will leave this link for you guys so you guys can go and read it yourself. But yes, this is a in the office mandate. Something I find really interesting about this is that AWS as it is massive. And so they have a bunch of smaller teams that are independent that allow them to operate. This is kind of why and where the things like microservices really take root and make sense. And because it allows you to expand with teams that aren't blocked by other teams and things like that. The interesting perspective I have here is, why do they all need to be in the same place? I'm not sure. I have worked remotely well before the pandemic, and I've never had a problem becoming friends or integrating with a team remotely. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that you need to have in-person time, because there's so much that happens on camera that's hard to explain and whatnot, and it's so good to meet people in person. I say at least twice a year is kind of my staple. You should meet with your team at least twice a year because it allows you to build those personal bonds. And I'm not saying you have to be best friends or anything, but you know how they speak, how their mannerisms is, and those types of things. Humans are, at least in this day and age, humans are born with that personal touch, and so it's very nice. But that's it. I think as a younger, newer engineer, it's critical. I don't know. Dutch, I am very much on board with the idea that for junior engineers. But then a question comes to my mind. For junior engineers and new engineers, is it because we don't have these things in place and we want them to be happy accidents? Part of me asks that question, and I don't have solid answers for all of these things. I do know that you are capable of doing these things and having a culture and having innovation without requiring chance or luck. So yeah. Dang, yeah, a lot of companies are taking this. I think I'll be interested to see how it shakes out. I'll be interested because you'll have a lot of very talented people that happen to have a family that live further away that decide to leave based off of finding a job that they can work remotely, I think. Unless if all the jobs do it, you'll see some talented people leaving AWS. The people that can actually leave because they're actually talented. That's kind of my guess, but I could be wrong. I always leave that up. It's always possible for me to wrong. I'm very rarely wrong, but sometimes it happens. I too don't actually mind being in the office. The biggest deal I have is if you do that, then you have to work for a company that's within a reasonable driving range. And this actually has more than just implications on me, but it also means that my team is just the people I can find near me. So I can only hire the best people I can find near me. Now, let's say I want to do something like the null cloud. Guess what? There's not many people near me that have expertise in things like that. And so by setting that requirement, a certain number of days in the office, I've actually just opened the scope a little bit, because like if you're doing 5 days, you have to be closer. If you're doing 3 days, maybe an hour and a half drive is acceptable. If you're doing 2 days, maybe an hour and a half drive. Maybe 3 days, maybe an hour drive is acceptable. Maybe 2 days, maybe an hour and a half. You've opened that, but you're still geographically locking yourself to the best people that are near you, unless you want to pay a lot of money to fly them and relocate them, which is really expensive. And actually gets more progressively expensive, because if you look at places like Seattle and San Francisco, it gets progressively more expensive because all these people have to be near the same location. So you actually make a progressive issue if you're planning on scaling like Google or Amazon. I mean, I know that we're all planning on scaling that large. Not that we actually will. I mean, that's just our dream, that our next company will be bigger than Amazon. And it's not going to happen, but it's your dream. I know it is. Dane, that's rough. That's rough. I always consider Slack asynchronous communication. If you Slack me, that means I will respond in time. That seems like a culture issue. Maybe if you had brought everybody into the office, you could fix your culture problems. This doesn't even make sense to me. How do you blame culture on these people? Don't even work in the same buildings. If you've ever been to Seattle, they work in many, many, many different buildings. So this actually just blows my mind, as that would be the statement. I'm sorry. You can ask for everybody to work from the office. That's fine. I just like it to be real data, actual data. Yeah, but you're not getting more work done. If you're saying that being distracted is a good thing, then I guess that's fine. But if you're saying actually getting work done, I'm not sure that that's a great thing. And not in the kitchen meeting. Right. Anyways. That is happening. AWS is leading the charge on that. I expect several other people that actually have the weight to pull that weight. Again, I think that the benefit really comes to smaller people who don't have the weight to pull. Somebody like, I don't know, pick a small company, doesn't have the ability to say, hey, you have to work here, because they need to get talent that isn't being paid for by Microsoft or AWS. We'll see how it shakes out, though. With AI, it's all possible. Let's move on to a little bit of security. I found just a few things in security that I think are interesting. Yeah. So Google's cloud team enjoyed releasing this one. And whether if it's a publicity stuff, it's a real thing. But they worked with Microsoft and got it fixed. But wire serving up credentials, escalating privileges in Azure Kubernetes services. So basically, Google Cloud found issues and way to escalate privileges in Azure Kubernetes service, and basically help Microsoft fix it. There you go. It's fixed. There's nothing you have to do. It's done. But this was a really great. Now, my question when I read this was, what were they doing with Azure Kubernetes Service? Like, what were you doing? Like, were you bounty hunting? Like, how? I don't understand how this came to be, right? I mean, was this a paid service? Did Microsoft say, hey, we don't know how to penetration test our Kubernetes cluster? I'm not sure. It's very interesting. Yeah, but checking out the competition, you don't try. The amount of work to do this was a lot of work. So I believe that their sales team paid for this work to be done. Hey guys, hey, could you find an issue with Azure Kubernetes Service? Like we just want to blog, okay? That's all we've got $100,000. Could you go find an issue? That's all I could think of. Perhaps they found the same vulnerability in GCP and figured it was the same on AKS, GKE. Yeah, possibly. Although this affected. It was part of the Azure CNI. So, I mean, possibly Azure CNI uses something like Istio in the background. And so maybe that's correct, because maybe it's something that they dealt with in Istio. They know that, and I don't know that Azure CNI uses Istio or Calico or whoever it is that they're using. And so it was the same. That is actually a good possibility. You can move between clouds if you have the right storage solution in place, and if everything is Kubernetes. You don't use one other feature. You don't use Terraform because it's terrible at locking you into a cloud. You don't use any other cloud feature, and Kubernetes makes it fairly easy to switch clouds. You're absolutely right. To even the playing field, a Google Cloud Platform did have a composer flaw that could lead to remote code execution. This has been resolved, so there's nothing for you to do at this point. With all of these things, if you're really wanting to play safe, my recommendation is that you review your logs, or your security team reviews your logs and looks for any suspicious activity. Now, hopefully you have some sort of advanced statistical analysis machine that's sitting there looking for unusual things. But if you don't, you can use an advanced statistical analysis machine like yourself and do it yourself. And the last thing in security that we had was more misconfiguration. I only wish that we had, in this day and era, and a sufficiently advanced statistical analysis machine that could review these types of things and find security vulnerabilities before they are released. I think that would be fantastic. All right, and that was it for security. Did anybody else see anything amazing in security? Absolutely amazing. Can't spell Terraform without terrible. The Terraform heresy. Welcome to the club. You can only really dislike on something once you've used it a lot. It's like why I can make fun of Kubernetes or Scrum or things like that is because I've used them a lot and I know the skeletons that are in their closets. You can't really hate on it until you've really tried to use it. All right. Well, the battle of the code editor is starting to heat up. Now, I don't know if many of you guys know what Visual Studio Code is. It's this small editor that was originally lightweight. By the time you've added all the plugins that you desire and made it exactly like you want, it's a little bit heavier than just regular Visual Studio because you have 20 gigs of plugins. But it's a lightweight editor to help you write code. Now, it has been probably the predominant king of graphical user interfaces for editing. But in recent months, it's been forked many, many times. And I wonder, is there any benefit to these? Now, you all know that I'm talking about Cursor. Cursor isn't new. It's been out for a couple of months, and it's something we're going to be testing out in the AI games. But over the last couple of months, there have been some free open source versions that have been released. Continue is another one. This one's not actually, no, it actually 100% is a straight fork of Visual Studio Code. And then the last one here is Void Text Editor. A brand new open source alternative to Cursor has been released. So how many of these we will get to try? I know I let you know of one last week that is out, and well, it's been announced. I'm on the waiting list, so we'll see if I get access to it. If I do, we're gonna have a AI editor showdown as a tier 1 stretch goal for the AI games. So, anyways, the Void Text Editor. If this was the Null Text Editor, I would have a shield for it just a little bit harder. Unfortunately, they were so close in their naming, but not quite there. A spin-off of a spin-off of a spin. It's been... Well, this is a spin-off of Visual Studio Code that is a copy of Cursor. So it's not a spin-off of a spin-off because Cursor is not open source. The Cursor part isn't. Whatever. Anyhow, but Void is a spin-off that clones the other spin-off. That's the logic that you need to follow. And this is not the first one. You know, there's Void, there's Continue, there's Cursor, and there's another, and I forget its name off the top of my head. I should have had that opened up, but there's the other one that I mentioned last week that's also out there. So again, like I said, tier 1 goal, I will test all of those that I can. Classically in movies that go really, really well. Yeah, pretty much. All right, in other AI news, there wasn't a whole lot going on this week. Not a whole lot of drama that I saw, but always leave a comment or a link if you have something that you'd like to share. On that, we have announcing the public beta of GitHub Copilot extensions. This is something that we had in private beta and now has released into public beta. They're available in public beta to all Copilot users and open for any developer organization to create an extension. So this is something we're going to do this winter. We're going to create our own Copilot extension, which should be fun. And we'll see how easy it is to do and whatnot, but it's out there. We have it now. Anybody is allowed to. I tried to get into the private beta. I applied for it. I didn't get accepted. It is what it is. OpenAI threatens to ban users who probe its Strawberry AI models. This always makes me wonder what somebody is hiding. You know, a bank is like, I put money in here and I put it in a vault. I'm like, okay. None. If you ask them what's in there, they'll be like, money. Okay, cool. OpenAI is like, guys, I don't know how we could be less open. I feel like our name is misleading, and I know this was at a board meeting or something, I know our name is misleading, and we just need to reiterate how we could be more closed, how we could be more obfuscated. Let's ban users who ask our AI about the model. Let's do that. Does that sound good? Now, I know a lot of you know that the strawberry or O1, or is it 0? I think it's, I don't know if it's O. I think it's little O1, has been released to a lot of fanfare. And I've given a little try, a little test here and there. And I have to say, it's interesting, but it's not really any better. The base model, I think, is just ChatGPT 4. And some things it does a little bit better. Some things I don't think that it does. Now, that being said, we're not here to talk about that because we will test it more in depth in the AI games. But what I do want to let you know is it's out there. Now, the only thing that's really interesting is it released with only 30 invocations per week. You could use it 30 times per week. I guess that's how much energy it uses. I don't know if this is a great selling point or not. 30 a week. So once a day? No, it's not once a day. 30 per week, that's over 7 days. That's a couple times per day. Like 4 or 5 times. Now, along with this, they did say that they had a new coding model that they would release to you for $2,000 per month. Now, that comes with enterprise licensing. I asked if I could get one as a nobody, and they said no. Actually, they just didn't respond to my inquiry because I said that I would like to test it and see how good it is. I don't know if they want it streamed or not. Maybe one of the reasons they said it was going to be a no, because I said that I wanted to stream it and show people how good it was. Dutch just needs to ask how many days are in a month to ChatGPT. It probably is better than how many R's are in strawberry. But let's move on. I know, wow, so Clutch, I was kind of disappointed because I said that I was willing to pay the $2,000 for a single month to just use it on everything and stream it. I thought it'd be good content. I don't know. It could be just a massive waste of $2,000. And maybe they're saving me money. Probably. All right, so is the death of C++, or gosh dang it, I screwed that up. I screwed up the mystery intro. Is the death of Rust on the horizon? Now, in a new, it's not an RFC. It's basically an RFC. In a new RFC, there has been laid out a plan for memory safety in C++. It's titled Safe C++. Now, I have not read this entire thing just yet. So I can't sit here and tell you, but I actually do want to go into a deep dive on this because I think that there are some very interesting things. And especially one of the things that I love about this. Let's see. It's at this. If they actually have features for safety. So effectively they're warnings to the compiler that says, hey, this is compiled for safety. This is actually something I called for back when C++ 11 and some of those things were used. I wanted a way to tell the compiler that I wanted to compile it with just the safe things, especially after C++ 17 came out. And so this is part of this proposal, is basically giving the compiler a strict compiler mode, which I think is really useful, because then you can also do a not strict compiler mode. So if you're just playing around with something, you could have it off and have it a lot more laxed. And then when you wanted to make it, enterprise ready, or, maybe your team's definition of general availability is that it passes the strict mode. That would be really, really cool. So I'm going to read more of this. I can't, like I said, I've only gotten through like a quarter of it at this point. I think it's really interesting and really cool, especially because as much as I like Rust, and I actually at this point like Rust syntax better than I do C++. C++ has so much code that's out there from, embedded devices and things like that, that having the ability for those teams to adopt memory safety without changing their entire workflows or tools is a huge deal and just massive. So I'm really excited about this. I'm going to post this as a link. And there you guys go. All right. It's cool. It's definitely cool. Now I have to ask you all, do you think, just think with me a second, will Redis go open source again? Do you think it's possible? Well, that's not in the news today. What is in the news and is interesting and makes me ask that question is just last week, we had this. Now, as I commented last week, they hadn't actually made their thing open source. They just announced that it was open source, and then they didn't actually do it. But as of today, our good project Elasticsearch is now under a triple license. Now, I warned you last week that I hope they didn't make it a triple license, because that would just make my heart sad. And they have made my heart sad. I don't know of an enterprise that's going to use a triple license, which is probably their goal, because this has foot guns for you trying to use it legally. But if you're an individual, this opens it up much more and is much easier for you to use and consume, because they most likely don't care. So yeah, anyways, they did actually finally put that there is now the AGPL version 3 license in there. And yeah, the whole project is under a triple license, except for the XPack folder, which is not open source at all. Don't go in this. Don't look at this code. It's not open source at all. It is source available, and we don't look at source available code. Now, the reason I ask, AWS responded. How did they respond? AWS hands OpenSearch to the Linux Foundation. So OpenSearch is their Elasticsearch and Kibana clone or fork that they've been maintaining outside of Elasticsearch. But what does this mean for the two projects? Do they recombine? Do they stay their separate ways? I actually have a lot of questions regarding this, and I'm actually interested to see where this goes, because I think that there's a lot of implications, especially for a project like Valkey. Now, I don't pretend to know the motivations behind the people when they decided to go open source again, or at least kind of with a triple license. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure what Redis is either. But if there is enough pressure from the open source competition, is that why? Or is it that they really wanted to be open source? I don't know. But Valkey stepped up the game this week with their Valkey 8 release, unlocking way more performance with 1 million requests per second. So they unlocked a lot more CPU potential, and it's a really fantastic release for the Valkey 8 people. Congratulations. Did you see the original announcement by the Elastic CEO? Yes, I did. And I said that he needed to make better announcements. I mean, let me put it this way. CEOs make announcements telling you a story they want you to know. It doesn't mean that's their real reason. Maybe it's part of it. I'm not calling him a liar. There could be other motivations too. Septembered. Thank you so much for your subscription. You're keeping the news weekly alive. Thank you very much. Now, in his original announcement, there was two things. He said he made it open source again, but it wasn't open source again. I get it that they did it later the next week. You make an announcement like that, go ahead and make it open source again. Because he made me look at source available code, and I really hate looking at source available code. Because I was like, oh, it's open source, so I went and looked at it, and bam, not open source. All right. Thank you so much, Russell. No. Sergeant Pepper, you guys are taking that out. I'm just saying they tell you the story that they want you to know. I'm just saying that there can be other motivations behind it. It's not lying either. Maybe not telling you the whole truth. And I'm not even saying he did that. Maybe that's the whole truth. And if that is, kudos to them. Absolutely kudos to them. That's all I'm saying. Now, we have an unsung hero of the Linux community. That unsung hero is something you guys don't realize or don't even understand is championing for gaming on Linux. That unsung hero is CloudStrike. CloudStrike has worked very hard, lost millions of dollars to champion for better gaming on Linux. Now, if you guys remember, when I first covered CloudStrike, I said, mind you, this is not Microsoft's fault because there was actually lawsuits against Microsoft. I said it squarely resides on CloudStrike. But I said, without doubt, I expect Microsoft to do something to prevent this from happening in the future, and that Microsoft could prevent something like this from happening in the future. And do you know how they're going to do it? Taking steps that drive resiliency and security for Windows customers. At first, this looks like a benign post that, yeah, you want to know this, and you wouldn't think about Linux gaming personally, but kernel level anti-cheat is basically, well, kernel level anti-cheat. I don't need to introduce it. We all hate it, and a few companies adore it. That being said, Microsoft is working to remove that access so that you can't do that and that you have to use their API. So they're building an API which Proton or Wine or anybody else could actually also implement that allows these things like security vendors, kernel level anti-cheat, to use without being loaded into the kernel and crashing your entire system. You're welcome. I'm a clairvoyant. You guys should listen to me more often because I tend to be right. I don't even know how I tend to be right. It just so happens. Anyways, if you guys want to read more on it, Microsoft wrote it up. I put the link. And I hope that this moves forward. Now, it's not out there yet. This is a roadmap statement for security at Microsoft on Windows and where it's going. How long will it take to get there? I don't know. Now, that being said, as of last week, when they stated that recall will not be able to be disabled or uninstalled, I lost hope for Windows. I think there's a lot of great ways to do anti-cheat as well. Don't get me wrong. I think we should have games with anti-cheat. Cheating is just the worst way to play an online game because you're there to have fun and to test your abilities. And cheaters, I think, just get fun out of ruining other people's day. Ruining other people. I don't even understand how it's fun for them. I don't get the psychology of a cheater because the fun is in playing the game. And if you're just using a cheat, then I don't even know why you're playing the game. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, but people do it. And I think we should have anti-cheat. We just shouldn't rely on kernel level anti-cheat. It's actually what I consider the lazy solution. When there's actually better solutions that you could do, you just have to think about it and actually implement it. All right. Let's move on to some cloud news. Now, if you want to use O1 without restriction, if you want to use it without that pesky 30 per week, well, you can. All you have to do is pay Azure for it. OpenAI's new models are on Azure. You can just pay them and get around your pesky 30 a week limit. Now, I did hear that OpenAI was working to make that, I think, like 10 per day or something like that. I don't know if they've done that yet or not. I didn't see any announcement on it, so I haven't. Well, the only announcement was that they were working on making it more efficient. Another article said that O1 takes 3 8-ounce glasses of water to return 100 words, which was mind-blowing. That's an estimate, though. So nothing I could really report on. But if you really want to take and kick the tires a little bit more, go ahead and check it out on Azure. That being said, there was not a whole lot of different things that are going on in Azure, except for the public preview of Advanced Container Networking Services, Enhanced Security and Observability in AKS. Now, AKS notoriously just had that security vulnerability, but we're going to put that aside. We're not talking about security vulnerabilities right now. There are some advanced container networking services now out there that are in public preview. So if you want to give them a shot and try them out, especially I think if you're having an issue, these might be interesting for you. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. But that was all for Azure. Moving on to AWS, we don't really need to see that screen. We can see this screen where we see AWS 3 now supports conditional writes. Conditional writes are really cool because previously your application had to check if a file existed before writing, and now you can have conditional writes that say to write if the file doesn't exist. So it's a conditional write. I don't know how to explain that any simpler, other than you can have a condition of its existence on whether you write. I just said it another different way using the same language. Fantastic. This will probably make, this should make some applications simpler because you can just offload those different conditions to the API instead of embedding them in every application that you write. Is this the... I am guessing that this is their eBPF based tools. Yes. At least parts of it. At least parts of it. Cilium. That's what I forgot earlier when I was listing off all I could think of at the time was flannel. Freaking flannel. Don't use flannel, by the way. Use calico or Cilium. Or I think it's just calico and Cilium. Is there another option? I don't know of another option. All I really know of is calico and Cilium. There was the Weaveworks, but Weaveworks shut down. Oh yeah, we went through this. All right. AWS Secret Announcers announces an open source release of Secret Manager Agent. I think that I talked about this. I think I talked about this, but I'm going to talk it again because it's actually really cool. Basically, it's just a agent that can live somewhere and it basically cache and load your secrets safely for you so you don't have to load that. Now, what I want to point out here, though, is that it is in GitHub. And this is actually really important because if you wanted to know how to do this yourself and you wanted to embed something in your application or something like that that needed secret manager support, well, you have this as an example. And not only that, it's written in Rust, so you get a really good memory safe example of how to do it. So I actually think that this is really cool beyond just that it exists and you can use it. I think that this existing is more of a roadmap, of a guidance. You know what would be really cool is to make like a Kubernetes operator that provided AWS secrets. You could do that now because you have a good template, a good guide on the API and how to do it securely and safely. So I think this is cool, and definitely worth checking out. I love it when these types of things are done because if I went to do this, could I pull secrets? Sure. But I don't have the experience of dealing with something like this to know that I did it securely. I would have something that worked. Senegami thinks they open sourced it as many of their Rust people left. You know, I don't know, Russell. It very well could be. Again, there hasn't been any commits or not much. So it's possibly a dead project, but that's why I still think that it's cool outside of the project outside of the actual just using the project, because I don't care that is not being maintained. I can go in here and I can look at the, this, and I can see what they're doing, how they deal with the things and whatnot. I mean, I do care that they let their Rust people go, and I'm just meaning for this. This is why I think these types of projects are really awesome. It's just a nice blueprint. Absolutely, that's what I was saying, and it exists. Carpenter 1.0 is released, and that's it. That's it for AWS. GCP. I don't know if you guys know what Carpenter is. If you don't worry about it. If you do, great, it's out. Let's move on. Introducing backup vaults for cyber resilience and simplified compute engine backups. I actually think that this is really good. Backing up your data has never been more critical. Faced with the unsafe rise of ransomware attacks, many customers are choosing to add additional protection to make sure their data stays secure. Okay, so basically what they're talking about is what you would think of is like a backup vault, which is offsite or whatnot, not connected directly to your infrastructure. That way, let's say somebody actually encrypts your entire infrastructure. You have this vault that is somewhere else that can be gone and redone. This is what's lacking from a lot of companies who have to either end up paying the ransomware or dealing with just rebuilding from scratch. And GCP is making that easier with their backup vaults for cyber resilience. Now, there's a lot of ways that this could go wrong because if it's still in your same GCP account, there are protections put in place to ensure that doesn't happen. I'm sure that by the end of this, there will be at least somebody that found a way to get around it. I don't know. I'm not saying that there is. But it's a really cool thing to make it a little bit easier because what I was describing as a backup vault in a different area, in a different location, not even connected by network, is difficult and takes a lot of work. And so if somebody has an easy button, this is better than nothing, which is what you're doing right now. I almost guarantee it. You're doing nothing, unless you work for a bank. GCP backup vaults for GCP engineers deleting your cloud. instead of cyber criminals encrypting your data when we accidentally delete your cloud. This is more a feature for them than it is for the people using it. Oh. All right. Well, everyone, I have just one thing to end with. I have one trip to plan in October, and as soon as I do, I'm going to be scheduling the AI games. And I'm putting a lot of work into the AI games. There's going to be a lot of content for it. Hopefully people like it and want to come see, because I have some really cool tier 1 and tier 2 stretch goals. We could expand to 2 extra weekends of AI glory, depending on viewership goals, which I am also working on to be kind of sane, hopefully. That being said, keep that in mind. Keep your calendar updated. You know, you need, we'll be doing it in October. Also, if you have ideas, let me know. I also need one volunteer. I need one volunteer for a thing that we're doing. I need that volunteer to be a really good breaker. I know one of you that is a really good breaker, but I'm not going to volunteer you directly. I need a really good breaker. So if one of you would like to participate, it should be fun. And you'd like to try breaking something, let me know. I'd love to have somebody from the community doing something with me. I'm going to be getting Raw Code involved in this. Some of you, that might ring a bell. He has agreed to help with the breaking of certain things, to see the ability of AI to fixing those things. And it should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. Anyways, that was it. Also, let me know, how do you guys like the little bit more focused? I know I talked a little bit more on one topic. I didn't do as broad. I didn't talk about every little topic. I'm going to continue doing this for the next few weeks, and you guys let me know for the news hours if you like this or you'd like the broader, where I just basically bring up all the different topics, or if you like it. The one thing I have to say is, if I'm hopefully going to get a person out there that's going to cut these videos up for me. I don't have the time. I definitely not this year to do that myself, but I hopefully am going to hire somebody and pay them to cut these. And so it would be nicer to have a few longer clips instead of just all the news, you know, where I talk about a specific topic. So I think that will be good. I'm trying some stuff. You let me know how the trying is working for you, whether you like it or not. And I'll see you guys tomorrow and next week. Thanks everybody for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic weekend ahead of you. And I look forward to writing the AI advent of code tomorrow. That's mostly what I'll be working on tomorrow, and one other thing. Anyways,